very much in play, but it just adapts.
And this is nothing new, by the way.
No.
I'd recommend, and I have before, Bart Ehrman has a book called Lost Christianities.
Yes.
That is a really excellent book at addressing and it's valid, the title, Lost Christianities, different views of Christianity that existed in the formational period in the first, second, third, fourth centuries that fell by the wayside or were obliterated by the more popular or dogmatic or authoritarian versions.
Of course, if you read the Bible correctly, you can get 4 different views of Christianity just from reading the Gospels.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, to kind of wrap this topic up here, in the article, the author talks about some possible responses. He hits on the typical responses and how they tend to push people away, and he also acknowledges a quote from this report at the 2008 American Sociological Association meeting that said that the most frequently mentioned role of Christians in deconversion was in amplifying existing doubt. So Christians come in without any real answers and dive right in because they've prayed on it and they know what to say. And it really tends to just push people further away. And this is where the article gets really kind of, you can almost sense this sense of resignation that this hemorrhaging will continue and all they can do is slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
And he offers some books for reaching the unchurched, and pretty much wraps it up with a statement that, in my view, tells me he misses the whole point here. So I'll just read you what he says at the very end here. It says, this means viewing their skepticism for what it often is, the tortured language of spiritual longing. And once we've listened long and hard to their stories and built bridges of trust, we will be ready to light the way back home. And what that tells me is like, no, it's not the tortured, the tortured language of spiritual longing. It's...
skepticism isn't language, it's not tortured, and it has nothing to do with spiritual longing.
And...
I'm just baffled.
Yeah, I was looking at that thinking, okay, you just totally missed the mark completely here. It's not the delivery. So, changing the way you do the church services or whatever is not going to fix it. It's not the delivery, it's the message. The message doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there were people who were talking about the most frequently mentioned role of Christians in deconversion is in amplifying doubt. And I think one aspect of that is something that I've also seen in the last 24 hours in email with a gentleman who I'll take it his word that he is in fact a young earth creationist. One of the problems of talking with young earth creationists is that you have no idea if you're actually conversing with somebody who believes what they're saying or if it's somebody trying to pretend, because the beliefs are so outrageous and so outside the bounds of reality that somebody could be making it up, but there's still somebody who believes this. And so it was fallacy after fallacy, starting at the beginning with, I have a professor who said that people who live in the city tend to believe less in a God than people who live out near nature where they can see God's handiwork.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, how many fallacies are in there? This appeal to your professor. I mean, I have a professor who said that people who don't understand science and skepticism are more likely to believe in a God than those who don't.
Yeah.
It's, making that kind of appeal is irrelevant. But the other thing is that there's an assumption in his claim that the people out by nature, whether that's their reason for it or not, manage to get it right. Maybe it's the case that, they're less conversant with science and skepticism. Maybe there's a million other reasons, but none of it goes to whether or not, to the truth of the claim that a God exists. And it followed on from there with arguments for a young earth, like, well, the sun is shrinking, and if it would have been around for billions of years, like science says, then it would have ceased to exist a long time ago, which is obviously false in that it assumes a constant rate of the sun decreasing, which is not demonstrable, and it's all based on like a single study that we've never even confirmed that the sun is in fact shrinking.
Right.
So it's just, and to kind of to their credit, and also as a bit of a laugh, Answers in Genesis has a portion of their website that it lists, specifically it's titled, I think, Arguments We Think Creationists Should Not Use.
Right.
And it's a bunch of traditional creationist arguments that have been so thoroughly debunked by scientists that it is embarrassing for people to use them. Now, when we talk about people amplifying doubts, it's this self-assured confidence that I know the truth and I'm going in with my presupposition, and therefore everything I discover confirms it. Oh, I heard somebody say that the sun is shrinking. Well, of course the Earth is only 6,000 years old, without ever actually investigating. And then when they go out and when they email atheists, they just kind of look ridiculous. When they email scientists, they look even more ridiculous.
Yeah.
But when they give this information to other Christians as a means of preparing them to defend the faith, they're doing their religion a disservice, but I'm overjoyed when they do it, because you build somebody's foundation, the foundation of their beliefs, on something that is so absolutely flimsy that it is really, really easy to expose that doubt and that uncertainty and the fallacies, and then get them on a path that maybe makes more sense towards reality. But so we've got full calls, and I know there's somebody on here from Bulgaria.
17 minutes already.
Ruben from Bulgaria.
Oh, it's me.
Hey.
Oh, hi.
Thanks for waiting.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Thanks for waiting.
Oh, hi. This is my first time, and I'm lucky because I have two of my favorite hosts.
Oh, thank you.
I'm an atheist. I have, actually, okay, the main reason I'm calling is actually to get advice from you guys, because I've been arguing with religious people about certain issues recently, and sometimes I just feel stuck after certain things that they say. So the thing I'm calling about is religious teaching, whether it's child abuse or not. So I presented my, the general arguments that people usually give, that this makes children think less critically, and in the more severe forms it can even lead to children being totally disconnected from reality. Right. So the main criticism I got, and some of that criticism came from atheists, was that, first of all, by calling religious indoctrination child abuse, I'm watering down the actual word, because child abuse should be reserved for more serious actions, like physical abuse, rape, and so on. And also they told me that the legal definition of the word is what should be taken seriously. So child abuse should be something punishable by crime, and they asked me, so do you want to punish parents who teach their children religion the same way you punish, parents who rape their children? Should you take away children from those parents? And, my main point was that it should be not an all or none phenomenon, but rather, there are severe forms of child abuse and light forms.
Yeah. Sure. Real quickly, and I don't know if we're getting an echo because I heard background noise, but there's a couple of things that we need to kind of hit real quick, and one is that religion isn't one thing. Not all religious teachings are the same, and not all religious teachings have the same impact. So it's kind of dishonest to discuss religion as a whole in this context. And also, the same thing is true for child abuse. It doesn't always take on the same forms or have the same degree of consequences. Beating or raping a child, I mean, those are clear examples of child abuse, but there's mental abuse as well. Yeah. And I would say that if you spent the first 5 years of your child's life teaching them that green was red and red was green as some kind of sociological experiment or whatever, that's something that can be repaired later on fairly easily, but it is a form of child abuse. For the people who are saying that claiming some religious indoctrination is child abuse is watering it down, they simply don't understand the impact that people can have on children in their formative years. And we're not saying that teaching somebody about, the Noah story is child abuse. The people who are identifying specific religious teachings as child abuse are talking about things like teaching a child that they're born bad, that they are inherently evil, that they are destined for hell. And if you go back to the Texas Free Thought Convention interviews that I did, Marlene Winnell has written a book, and she's a psychologist who's got a practice and has been specifically dealing with people suffering from something that she's called religious trauma syndrome. I dare those people who are saying that this isn't child abuse to go up to those individuals who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who have been atheists for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, who are still traumatized and paralyzed by fear because they have been ostracized from their support structure and their family and friends, and because they still have nightmares about claims of hell and other things. You're right to point out that the fallacies that are used to bolster religion are harmful to a developing individual's brain, because it sets up a barrier between them and an actual discovery of reality. It prevents them from exercising critical thinking skills. Now, the idea that we need to punish a rapist equally to somebody who's abusive in tone is just silly. I mean, there are people who have their kids taken away for some period of time because the home environment is not conducive to raising a child, but they get them back. You don't give them back to a rapist. So it's just kind of absurd to me that people would think that religion needs to be one thing, child abuse needs to be only one thing, and the punishment for child abuse needs to be only one thing. There's a broader spectrum here.
Yeah, I think the people that are claiming that somehow this has to be on the same level as rape or physical abuse of a child in order to qualify as abuse, I think they're the ones engaging in a straw man argument here. I think there, as Matt said, there's different levels of abuse, but I would also argue that if, for example, in the Catholic Church, where you set the priests up as like the ultimate moral authority in the church, and you tell kids that they have to submit to these guys in robes, and whatever they do is coming from God, and then this guy abuses them. Essentially what you've done is you've set up a child to accept this authority figure who doesn't really warrant that kind of acceptance, but you've really set a kid up for abuse. And especially when everyone in the parish is so deferential toward these guys, and everybody is so busy protecting the church that they forget that they're supposed to be protecting their children.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of religious teachings are on par with the level of harm in a different realm, and that is with regard to anti-vaxxers. They are intentionally compromising the physical immune system of their children, thereby poisoning the rest through herd immunity. And the people who are teaching their children the sort of anti-critical thinking skills and dogmatic assertions about religion are compromising their children's mental immune system and making them susceptible to abuse, to cons, to an overdependence and reliance upon authority figures. I'm just baffled that people can think that this isn't somehow harmful. And the people who think that, you know, all harm is equal, I think they're shortchanging the real issue here.
Well, and anybody that says that this is trivial, I mean, you know, you mentioned Marlene Winnell and her religious trauma syndrome. I mean, you should see our email list sometimes. We get emails from people saying, hey, you know, I'm an atheist, and I've been an atheist for a few years now, and I don't believe there's a God, but I can't get over my fear of hell. You know, how do you get past that? Does that ever get better?
What I find particularly offensive, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but what I find particularly offensive is that here's an individual whose brain has been polluted and poisoned by a particularly dastardly religious concept. And they have freed their mind from a lot of this stuff, but there's still this nagging thing clinging on. And there are asses out there who will look at that and say, see, somewhere in your subconscious level, you know all this is true. I see it over and over again. It drives me absolutely bonkers that somebody said that religion basically poisons you and then dangles the antidote in front of you. And this is kind of what they're doing in a sense in this context is you poison your mind, and then when you suffer the consequences of that poison, they say, see, you know, and we've got the cure, by the way. No, they don't.